Today we're doing a mod on how to create the ultimate Game Boy. This is an emulator, it's not going to take carts, but I've been on a quest to convert the PowerKitty RGB20SX, which I think was a brilliant concept, just not perfectly executed for the Game Boy aficionados. So if you want something like this, what you'll need is a spare PowerKitty RGB20SX. I got this from LitNXT, so please check them out. But this video today is sponsored by PCBWay. This whole thing wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for them. And so this is just a great win-win situation where I get to gush over PCBWay for what they have done for me with this mod. So what happened was I reached out to Andrea a user on Reddit who had created a external shell for the RGB20SX, and I said, can I use your project? Turns out they've already put their project up on the PCBWay website. So what you do is you go to his page, and I'll put the link in the description below. Now, there are sort of some technicalities involved there because you need to choose what materials you want to use. But if you want something that is exactly like mine, I have the information for that in the description below as well. So thank you so much to PCBWay for making this possible. You'll see throughout the video what this thing looks like and how it turned out. A few other little things that you will need for this build. You'll need probably a hairdryer or a heat gun for some of the things like prying the screen off. You will need a little toolkit of little screw bits to do all the screwing, and probably a little plastic spudger to pull things off here and there. So here we have it from PCBWay. This is my print. It is a translucent plastic. I'll put the details in the description below. It's coated in this purple. Now the purple is quite a bit darker than what I was expecting, but I mean, I just kind of chose their preset purple. I didn't send a Pantone color or anything. And I don't know, you'll see the final result. It looks absolutely stunning. Now you'll see I put that little speaker place there. Got holes for screws, the whole thing. This is very, very well designed. Places to push the PCB down. This is the back plate with those inline trigger buttons, ribbing here at the bottom to be like DMG-like. Now you can imagine if you did this in gray, how stunning that would look, but I'm happy with my purple. The only thing is the sanding here with these ridges. It does create an unevenness because this is not an injection molded thing. This is a 3D printed thing. It is quite exceptional how good their 3D prints are. Now the black buttons, what are these? I think these are the start and select buttons. But what I'm noticing with this black is that it's got a stipple on it, which may cause a problem later. This is the power button. So they just made a bunch of each button that I requested. So these are the purple power buttons. Just looks great. I think it's going to look good in the body. And I got this clear plastic, and I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but I think this looks fantastic. It's just polished plastic. Very nice. This is the specs. So if you want to pause here and check the specs of each part, you can check that out. These are the action buttons. So, I was talking about that stipple. I think this is going to cause a problem later on, the fact that it does have that stipple on it. And so I'll check what plastic I used, but you may want to use a smooth plastic rather than the plastic I chose. I think just go for a normal resin rather than whatever I went for. I don't know what I went for. I think I went something with a native black. Anyway, these are start and select buttons, the clear plastic. Also, just perfectly clear. I was going to paint metallic paint on the back of them, but I've decided not to do the metallic paint behind the buttons. Let me know what you think the correct configuration is for this handheld. So that was that one. That is just all clear. And here we've got the power button in place. That's looking really good. I'm pretty happy with that. And this is all clear with the all clear start and select buttons. Then we're going to do clear on the bottom, black on top with clear start and select buttons maybe. Then we could go with black on the bottom, clear on top. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So if I go with black buttons on the bottom, maybe I can do black start and select buttons. I don't know. Maybe it's too much black on this. The purple is already quite dark. Could go with clear start and select. I think if I go with clear start and select, I must do clear action buttons on the bottom. Now here I do think there's an issue with these buttons. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through them and find, because it's trial and error, the stipple is random on the buttons, so I'll find the ones that fit in the hole properly, like it's not going to give a lot of resistance. So I'm just going to find them. I think I found 2 that work, and I think I'm happy with this configuration. Clear on the bottom, black on top. Also, I don't want to put sticky black buttons on the bottom if they're going to give issues later. And these clear ones do work perfectly, like there's no play, and also because they're smooth, they work really well as action buttons. So this is the original. Now this is the one I was going to use as my blank, but I want to do the previous mod on this. I want to do a backplate on this, just a clear translucent backplate. So I don't think I'm going to use this. So this is from LitNXT, if you want to get one. The reason I'm doing the mod is because of these buttons. These trigger buttons suck, man. They're too big, they stick out too much, they're sharp, just doesn't work for me. So we're going to go with the DMG style. So I'm going to use this one. I wasn't totally happy with this mod. The color didn't come out correctly. It bends a little bit in the beginning because there's too many cuts for the back buttons. So we're going to use this one. We're going to dismantle this one and use it as our blank for this mod. Just getting the screws out with my trusty JZork screwdriver. Now remember, the battery is going to be stuck to your back plates even if you are using an original one. So just be careful of that cable and make sure that you unplug it nicely. Now find a place to put all your screws, because there's gonna be a few. So just find a safe place. Don't you do this. Use a spudger or something to pry the battery, because you can actually damage a battery by doing it this way. And save that adhesive. You're going to need that adhesive later. So just keep that clean and clear. Now there's a little tab on a ribbon button. This is the ribbon cable for the screen. So just lift that tab and then carefully pry that ribbon cable out. But also remember to take your SD cards out. That will damage the device. It will definitely create damage. Now I've got to get the speaker cable out, and we need to sort out the joysticks. So there's also little ribbon cables here. Now again, there's a little plastic tab. You lift it and then you pull the ribbon cable out. Now you don't have to be too careful here, but you do need to be very wary that if you pull that ribbon cable too hard, it will break. So just, be gentle with these things. I've got nice plastic tweezers to do this sort of thing with. And then just unscrew these joysticks and pull them out. There we go. Some screws and some joysticks. Now, a comment on the joysticks is that we are going to have to put one of the joysticks back later because ArkOS doesn't like no joysticks. So here are the screws. There aren't screws at the top here. The HDMI port is actually keeping the PCB in place at the top. So we just need to get those 4 screws out at the bottom. 2 by the joysticks and then 2 in the middle by the D-pad and the action button. So just getting those out. Pulling the ribbon cable out for the screen. Again, just be careful. This is attached to your screen, and if you damage the port or whatever, then you're done. Like your PCB is done. You need to get a new one. So just be careful with these things. It's pretty robust. PowerKitty do make decent PCBs. I don't know who they use. Now just pull the PCB down to get that HDMI port out, and then just gently pry here and there, pull it until it feels like it's coming loose. Remember that ribbon cable in the middle is going to create a little bit of friction. Push that through the hole. Get the PCB off. After that, it's free. It's not attached in any way. Got the rubber membranes from the action buttons and the D-pad. Now there's some adhesive tape for the screen, so just carefully pry that adhesive tape off. And then let's get the speaker off. Now the speaker is attached with adhesive. I thought I'll just use my knife here because I want to get under the adhesive and get it off so that we can use that adhesive again later on to just squish it back into the new case. So just be careful as you're pulling it off. I'm using the knife to peel that adhesive off so that it sticks to the speaker and rather not to the case. And then it came off a little bit there. I'm just getting that back into place so that we can use that later on. It fits so nicely in there. Andrea I has done a great job here, just making it looks like it's meant to be like factory fitted. Now here's the heat gun. Now you don't want to overdo this. This is going to work very quickly if you've got an actual heat gun. So I'm being very conservative here off screen. I am just pushing it very gently, feeling if it's got a bit of give, heat it up a little bit more, Also, just be careful to clear other things away from the heat gun because it affects things more than you realize. So just giving it a little bit more heat. Do it in stages, don't overdo it, but then also move fairly quickly because it's going to cool down quite quickly as well. So just doing a little bit on the front as well. This should do it. Let's have a look now. I'm just doing it off screen, sorry about that. Just focused here. Giving it a push. Yeah, it's coming off. I might probably should have done a little bit more heat here, but it is coming off. I'm giving it a fair amount of pressure, but not a lot. Like I'm just pushing it gently, just getting a bit more heat here. Mostly actually for the other end. The vertical part of the screen on the sides is going to peel off easily. It's the top and the bottom that have got all that surface area. It's going to be difficult to peel off, and also you don't want to just pull it off because then you're going to lose that adhesive. So rather apply a little bit of heat and get it off than pull it hard, get it off, but then the adhesive is off. And also if you're pulling really hard, you might crack the screen. So it really is a balance of enough or not enough heat. So just take your time with this stage of the build, and that's why I've kept all of this footage, because I want you to see how painstakingly careful I was. Now there I damaged a bit of the adhesive, so I'm just being careful just to get it back into place. Now it's quite squishy, so you can kind of just like squish it around and get it into place. I mean, you'll still get it to work. There we go. Alright, I'm just using my screwdriver to spudge it. It's not doing anything specific with a screwdriver. Just getting into position there so that we can put it back into the new case. Nice. Alright. Okay, so now this is the second time. First time it was skew because I did it from the other side. You've actually got to eyeball this because there's a bit of play here. It doesn't just slot into place. You've got to eyeball it and make sure that it's even and straight on all the edges, and then you can start putting a bit of pressure. Now what I'm doing is trying to create a bit of pressure between the screen and the case. So I'm just going to squeeze it and go around the edges and just make sure that adhesive has made contact between the plastic of the case and the glass of the screen. And now the speaker should just squish into that. Andrea Eyes made guides and everything for the speaker, so just put it in between those lines and just give it a push with the adhesive. Squish it in there. You definitely want that adhesive to be in position so that you don't get any rattling of the speaker later on. So definitely make sure that it's in, that the adhesive has worked, and that your speaker is in position. So now you want to get your buttons in place. Now with the membranes, just make sure that it's on those pins that Andrea I has provided. Just put your power button in, your volume buttons on the edge, where my volume buttons were still in there. Now, when you put this PCB in, it's very careful. You've got to be very careful to get it past the power button on the one side, the volume buttons on the other side, because those digital buttons can get damaged, and then guide it past the cable for the speaker and have that ribbon cable in through the hole from the screen. So there's a lot of things to be careful of here. Here I'm just making sure those volume buttons are in position properly and not damaging the digital buttons on the PCB. So a lot of things to kind of think of here, and if they pop out, just take the PCB out, and put it back in. Just be careful of that stage of the process. Now I've just put my screws in, I'm putting my ribbon cable back in. There is a little line to show you when you are parallel and in position, and then just put that little clip back in, and then your ribbon cable should be fine. I did this a number of times and my screen worked every time, so it's pretty easy. It looks daunting, but it isn't that hard. Now just check again that your buttons are working. Get your screws tight enough, not too tight because you can break the PCB and you can break the case, so just tight enough that it's holding the D-pad and the action buttons in position. Just check that they do work. You'll have to check again, you want to do a test before you close it with the battery plugged in to make sure your action buttons in your D-pad is working. Position your battery. Now the joystick, what I did here was I pulled the actual little joystick part out. It just pops out. So pull that out and then put the joystick mechanism in here so that ArkOS doesn't get upset with us that we've removed all the joysticks. And then I've used Captain tape. So look it up on Amazon, Captain tape. It's electrical tape. The adhesive's not going to cause any issues on your PCB or on your electronics, so that's the best tape to use for this kind of application. And just put a bunch of it on there just so that it doesn't shake or rattle in the body when you're using it later on. So just make sure it's like made contact and it's all in there nicely. You're going to get that ugly black blotch, unfortunately. And then here's a little like gotcha. These guide holes were too big, and so my screws weren't making contact. I said he didn't have this issue. I did. Now, as I mentioned, I am closing it up, but what I'm not showing you here is that I did a few tests to make sure that everything was working before I closed it up. So my action buttons, my power button, my volume button, I plugged in the battery and did a test before I closed here. So just bear that in mind. Now, ArkOS is the one I used. If you know of a way to get MinUI working with a single SD card slot, then let me know. But unreal.io has blocked out the one card slot to make it more minimalistic. But I have actually gotten quite a cool thing going here with ArkOS. So bear with me. You download ArkOS. You flash it with Rufus onto an SD card. So just get a new SD card, flash it. Or if you want to wipe the old SD card, wipe it to exFAT, flash it. Put the SD card in, switch it on. It's going to install on your device. Yippity doo dah. And then I am taking the SD card out so that I can put my ROMs on and my BIOS on. And we are going to put Pico 8 on, as you'll see now. Pay for Pico 8, download the Raspberry Pi version, grab these files and drag them into the Pico 8 folder. And then what you want to do is right click and create a new text document and call it zzzsplore.p8. So change the file name to .p8. It'll ask you if you're sure you want to do that, and you just say yes, because that is going to allow us to use the Pico 8 app on our device, which I really like. It's one of the reasons why I am doing this mod. And then we just put the SD card with ArkOS back into our device and we're off to the races. Now, another thing that I did here was I went into the settings and remapped all the buttons. It's the only way that I seem to have been able to get around the fact that we don't have a joystick in here anymore. This might not be the case for you. It might have just been a quirk for me because I originally didn't use the joystick and then I did use the joystick, and so ArkOS wasn't happy with me. But then I also just went ahead and skipped the joystick. I pressed and held the A button to skip any of the joystick mappings, and that seemed to help. And then also, just to be safe, I went into RetroArch and I went into the inputs area, and then I went into the RetroPad binds and port 1 controls, and I removed that joystick option just so that it's not trying to use the joystick as a D-pad, just in case. And then I saved my settings, saved my configuration file for that. So just a little bit of housekeeping, but I don't think you're going to have to do that. Now, my shader, I used this shader. I used all my shaders under the handheld section, and I used the Gameboy, where is it? The Gameboy palette, the GB palette DMG, that's the one I used. Now this is mostly for colorization. You can do colorization in a different way, but I just used this one. And then append presets. So we're going to append one here, and we're going to go back into handheld sections here. There we go. And use the LCD, just go down here, the LCD 3X. And that'll add an LCD. Now I've put the frame rates up at the top there so that you can see it's not slowing the game down at all. I know it's two shaders, but it's working, and it works really nicely. And then remember to go back into shaders and say save presets, save content directory preset, so that your preset is saved for Gameboy. Really nice. I'm loving it. Now the other thing I did was I went and I got this theme for ArkOS. It's a user-made theme and it makes it look like MinUI. Now you don't have to do this, but I just wanted something that had that minimalist look. And then I also enabled the quick mode in the options section of ArkOS. I enabled the one press switch off, but then also enabled the quick mode so that when I power on, it opens up to my last save state. And so whatever I saved, whatever game I switched the device off on, it will open. So that's basically an auto-resume system that I've set up on ArkOS. So for me, those are all the bases covered, and now I'm super happy with the way that I've got it set up. So let's get on to the pros and cons of this build. Now, there aren't a lot of cons, but I do want to touch on them. Some of them have to do with, for instance, those countersunk holes. Now, Andrea, I said he didn't have this issue. I had this issue, so I had to drill to countersink those screws to get those middle screws going. So I'm not sure what happened there, but I just want to note that. The other thing is that the back section, the section of the back plate that doesn't have the ribbing, has bubbled on mine. So I can probably use a heat gun and push that bubble in, but I just wanted to note that it has bubbled slightly. Not the coating, but the actual plastic has bulged a little bit. The other thing is that he has deleted the hole for the second SD card slot, so if you wanted to use Rocknex or something, you can't. But you could just redesign his 3D print to have a hole for the second SD card slot. But I have come up with a pretty damn cool ArkOS solution for this. Another downside is that this is a once-off, so you are going to have PCBWay or whoever does your print, you're going to have like the ridges aren't going to line up perfectly. It's not a factory injection molded thing, and so you do have little quirks like that. Another thing that may be a negative, for me it's actually a positive, is the fact that the screen does stand outside the frame, but that's actually a positive for me, so we'll move on to the positives. The positive is, look how pretty. It's absolutely beautiful. If you want a DMG style device with a massive square screen, look no further. This is the thing to do. And if you go for a translucent design like mine, you are going to be so happy. Another big positive is that he's made the action buttons bigger. So you now have nice big DMG style buttons like an old Game Boy. I also like the inline back buttons. It's just nice to not have these ugly back buttons. A lot of us who went for this device wanted it to play Game Boy, and we don't really want triggers. So for me, that's a huge plus. And then obviously the biggest thing is that it is super unique. If you do this mod, you'll be one of a few people in the world to have this. It's absolutely stunning. Thank you so much to Andrea for designing this. Thank you so much to PCBWay for sponsoring this and allowing me to make this, because this is definitely gonna be one of my favorite things for quite some time.